So, for those of you that don't know, I'm sure I've talked about it before in passing, I've made reference to it. And if you've been around my channel for a long time or you know me personally, then you know that growing up, me and my brothers would be taken along for a drive after midnight, most nights, to go deliver newspapers. Now, a lot of times we would alternate, sometimes we would go at the same time. I don't know exactly how old I was when I started doing this, but this was not uncommon for us to do. And by what that is, I mean helping my parents with their jobs. So from a very young age, I was always being taken along to painting jobs, cleaning jobs, plumbing, electric, construction, just random stuff like that. A lot of times, just because like, hey, I have to go do this job and I need you to come with me because nobody's there to watch you. But also while we were there, it was like, hey, help me with this, help me with this, and then it eventually just became a thing where me and my brothers and sister would just like be painting houses at 11 years old or something like that, just doing whatever. Lots of odd jobs. Most of the time, just to keep us there physically to be watched, but also we would help. And then as we got older, we would actually just be doing the jobs. Well, one of the main things we used to do that I have a lot of fond memories when I look back on, but I also have a lot of, it's the source of a lot of problems for me in my adulthood, and that was delivering newspapers. So we would oftentimes, I want to say, it probably started after sometime after the year 2000. So I was 7, 8. I think I was probably closer to 9 or 10 when we started doing it. At least I think. I don't quote me on that. I might have been around that age, but we would be woken up at about midnight or 11:30 to midnight, and I remember very specifically my dad's alarm. You know, when I was that young, I was still sleeping in my parents' bed. I don't think I stopped sleeping in my parents' bed until I was probably 12 or 13. Just I had a lot of separation anxiety, made it impossible for me to sleep over friends' houses and really go anywhere overnight away from home without my family. And actually, yeah, using that as a reference, and it was definitely before 12, so I must have been around 10 or so when we were doing this. And I just remember hearing my dad's alarm go off, and it was one of those old, just kind of alarms. I have it vividly in my head. Hell, I think my old phone actually has the alarm sound. I would use that to wake up to. As weirdly traumatic as that is, I would prefer to wake up to that kind of an alarm. Anyway, I just remember like being asleep and then hearing that alarm go off, and my dad would get up, and I would be like, I'll just sit here and wait till he like drags me out of bed to go help him. Because when it came to delivering newspapers, it was always, the reason was so we could have somebody in the passenger seat to put newspapers in the mailbox on that side of the car, and also someone to keep to make sure that they were awake. Because they were already working their jobs during the day, which again was cleaning, construction, and random odd jobs and stuff like that. And so they'd be tired going into it. My dad would be running off a couple hours of sleep, and he would need one of us kids, me, my brother Henry, or I think maybe my sister, maybe a little bit, but it was mostly just me and my brother Henry. He'd need one of us or both of us to be in the car with him to help keep him awake and just keep him entertained. We would all, bond with each other and stuff. So yeah, he'd get up and we would load ourselves in the car, summer, fall, spring, winter, it didn't matter. We were in the car. I remember a lot of the winter ones because the cars were all beaten and old and didn't have great heat. So we're sitting there bundled up in a sweater. It's 1 a.m. I'm 10 years old. I'm shivering in the passenger seat, and we're just driving down dark back roads in the butt crack of New Hampshire, dropping newspapers in weird, dingy houses. And well, first we would have to go and drive. I think we had to pick it up in Guilford or Laconia. No, it was well. All right, so there were, I think, 2 or 3. We had 3 newspapers we were delivering. At one point, we were just delivering one, but then as they were going, they picked up more newspaper companies to cover more houses and to get more money. So, we would deliver the Union Leader, the Concord Monitor, and oh, there was one more. I don't remember what it was, but I think the Union Leader. I want to say, the Laconia Daily Sun, I think. I think it was. And I think the Laconia Sunday paper was the really annoying one because that paper came. We would go to where the newspaper place was, and we would there just be like, you guys know those like, they're like the really rigid plastic glue strips that would be like, I don't know how to describe it, but you'd have to like get your fingernail under. They're like thin, like half an inch thick of like solid plastic wraparound strips that would be like glued at one side. You have to get your fingernail underneath and like try to like rip it off, except sometimes it would rip mostly, but there would be like a string of it left, so then you had to break it and they'd like cut into your hands and stuff. It was newspapers wrapped up in some of that. So we would just go and like we'd drive 30 minutes we'd wake up at midnight, leave by like 12:15, drive 20 to 35 minutes or something like that to the newspaper place. There'd just be papers sitting outside or in like a little whatever thing, and we get out and we're like, it's like 30 degrees in November or December or something like that, and we're grabbing newspapers, we're throwing them into the back of the car, into like the back seat of this old like Oldsmobile fucking thing, or like a sedan. And then we get back in the car, and then I like break one of those things to get the papers, put them on my lap, and then I would sit there with my seatbelt on with papers on my lap, with like a 20-pound thing of papers on my lap, and we would head off and we'd drive down this really deep back road. I'm not gonna name it, but we would drive all the way down to the end, which took like 15 minutes to get to where we would start our newspaper delivery. And then we just start working our way out of this location. And we would hit so many houses on the way out. And it would just be like driving, pull over to a house, pull up to the mailbox, and either he would have it on his side and he would grab the paper, fold it in half, and put it in the mailbox, drive away. And if it was on my side, roll down the window, fold it up, put it in the mailbox, drive away. And it was doing a lot of that. And then there were some houses where they didn't want to put it in the mailbox, or they didn't have a mailbox, so we'd have to like throw it into their driveway. So we would have a bunch of papers we'd have to fold in half and put into these little like clear, like translucent blue bags that we would then have to tie in a knot. And then as we were driving by the houses, that old like kid in a bicycle throwing the paper in the driveway thing, it was that, except we would just slow down near the driveway and whip it down the driveway and be like, hell yeah, that was a good throw. That was a far throw. And he'd like, say like good throw and whatever, and I'd smile, and he'd do the same thing on his side. And we would just drive listening to 1015 The Hawk, or I think it was 1015 at the time. Yeah, because I think today it's 104.9, but it was 1015 The Hawk, which was like, and then you have like an eagle screech for the radio station, and it was a classic rock station. So just driving around listening to fucking Aerosmith and AC/DC and Leonard Skinner and, oh man, Led Zeppelin. And we would just sit there and do that from midnight to like 6 or 7 a.m. And it depended because, again, later on we would pick up more. We'd have 3 different deliveries. And on a Sunday, it would take forever because on Sundays, the papers arrived in 2 parts because the Sunday papers were huge. So we would have to actually take whenever on Sundays, a lot of times me and my brother Henry would go at the same time, and one of us would sit in the back seat and build the papers. We'd build the Sunday papers where we'd have to take both halves, open up one half, take the guts of the other paper, stuff it in there, and it would make the whole thing like twice as thick, which is how the papers were. And then we would make a pile of those, and then we'd make a pile of those but bagged, and we'd pre-bag, we'd pre-stack, we'd do all this stuff, and then he'd, whoever's in the back seat would hand them up to the front. And then we would also stop at a place called Cumberland Farms, which is like the only 24-hour gas station. We'd stop there, go inside, get a Coke, get a root beer, get a ginger ale or a Moxie or something like that, and then head on out and do our thing. And we did that for years, and we would drive around and deliver newspapers up until the sun came up. And and that there was a time where actually we had to the whole reason for I'm doing this is I want to tell a couple of quick stories, but also, setting the background to give you guys an idea of what that was like. There were 2 instances, not individual. These aren't isolated instances. This is like how this would go sometimes is my dad had a a white windowless van that had the entire back of it gutted out completely. So it was literally just the 2 front seats, a center console, and then nothing in the back. And then they got that for delivering newspapers and for doing other jobs during the day. and me and my brother Henry would sit in the back, no seatbelts, nothing, just sitting on the cold metal frame of this white van in the middle of January, freezing our fucking asses off, wearing gloves in the back of this car because I can hear and smell the heat of that van, and I can feel. Oh my god, I just had like a real nostalgic moment in my gut. I can feel that exact environment, that atmosphere. Wow, I haven't envisioned that in a long time. I want to relive that for a day. I wish I had the superpower to just like select memories and relive them for like an hour at a time. I would be very content with the concept of dying if I knew that I could at any time throughout the rest of my life just go back and relive those small moments, because a part of getting older is, those moments are getting further and further away and you forget them. Like I forgot about that feeling of being in the back of that van. I forgot that so deeply, but that just got brought back to life for a second right there. And I wish I could go and relive those moments. I would be able to live the rest of my life in a lot better mood because I'm a very sentimental and nostalgic person and I'm constantly living in the past. That's why I'm fucking depressed. But I would love to just be able to go back and relive that. Anyway, so it would be him and I in the back of this cold metal frame of this van, just building Sunday papers, bagging union leaders, and getting stuff ready so we wouldn't have to waste time doing it at the mailbox, and we would just drive around from, I guess, like I said, like probably we'd start at about 1 a.m. By the time we got out there, got the papers, got situated, and headed on our way to the first house. We would leave at midnight, roughly, and put the first newspaper in a box, roughly, at about 1 a.m. And we would do this, I'm pretty sure mostly every night. I think we kind of alternated, but this is the kind of thing where it bled into school days. So especially on a Sunday, because that was a real busy day, and we would do this just to have to get up and go to school Monday morning. And sometimes we get done real late. We would get done at like 9 a.m. or something, and we just wouldn't go to school that day. But we would, yeah, like I said, so that's where like a lot of my insomnia and bad sleeping habits came to be. Was 10 years old, waking up at midnight and delivering newspapers all night, and then going to school, getting home, and either getting home and just kind of living my life, or getting home and then going and cleaning a house with my mom or something like that. Like it wasn't very great, but that's the only option they really had with both of them working like that. And there was another time, so like with him and I sitting in the back of the van building the papers and bagging them, there was another time, happened a few times actually, where there was the local supermarket. He would actually, I think we had to pick up the Sunday papers. Like a different guy would drop off the Sunday papers that we were meant to deliver. So he would go drop it off at different locations, and then we would go to those locations after hours and pick them up to start the route. So we would drive to the local supermarket and get out of the car, and there was just like in the overhang with like the stone cement brick support beams or whatever at the outside of like a Hannaford or whatever, like a Meyer or something like that, whatever you have near you. And there would just be a giant stack of newspapers in two halves, the Sunday papers, the guts and the outside of it. And then he would drop us off. He would pull up to it and be like, all right, I'm going to go, because at this time we had the Konya Daily Sunday paper, and we had the Union Leader and the Concord Monitor. So he would be like, all right, I'm going to go get rid of all the newspaper deliveries this way, and then when we head back towards our town, I'll pick you guys up. We're like, okay. So he would drop off this 10 and 13-year-old, or like this 9 and 12-year-old in this parking lot, and we would just sit there under like the fluorescent flickering light at fucking midnight or 1 a.m. in the middle of winter. And we just sit there bundled up in hats and gloves and like ski clothes and stuff like that, just sitting outside with each other, dead, cold, isolated silence. There's no cars, nothing. It's just the whisper of a chilly wind as we would just sit there building newspapers for like 40 minutes to an hour, maybe more. I don't know. I can't tell how long we stayed there. And then every time a car would go by, we both kind of like stop. It's not like it wasn't a dangerous part of town by any means. It was actually a really nice area. But again, we're just two kids sitting out there, and like it's a wonder we didn't have cops pulling up to us. I want to say, I might be injecting memory, but I want to say we had a cop pull up at some point, but I can't verify if that's a real memory or if I'm thinking about it now, so I'm projecting it to be real. I don't know. But yeah, we would sit there and just build the papers, bag the papers, and then he would come by when he got done, pick us up. We'd warm up in the car. One of us would go to sleep, the other would stay awake. And then after like a couple hours, we would switch. I'd jump in the back seat, I'd go to sleep, he'd stay awake, and we would just do that on those days and just bust out the papers, dude. That was I don't know how many years that went on for, a couple years. But that was quite an interesting time in my life. I think that's the only reason I can remember those early years, because I don't remember a lot before the age of 12. And what I do remember is stuff like that, delivering newspapers. I don't remember much about like me and like family events. I remember little snippets of things, but mostly because memories that were reminding me, memories that I was being reminded of based on pictures my family has. I'd be like, oh yeah, I do remember that day. But like, if I'm reaching back, I can't pull much out of my brain. So right now, now after that, all that preamble, I have 3 quick stories for you guys, and I will have more, but I have to think about them. The first one's really quick. So remember how I said we pull up to a mailbox, and with me in the passenger seat, I would put the newspaper in the box, roll out the window, we drive off. There was nothing worse than sitting in the car in this old shitty like 98 sedan and like having this thing like barely be able to heat up and barely maintain its heat, and then in the middle of winter, and then having to roll down the window, stuff a paper in the box, and then roll up the window. Like all the heat gets sapped out of the car instantly in a second. So you're like, I'm warm. Oh fuck, there's a box, and you got the window comes down, you and then you put stuff in the mailbox, and then the window goes up. And I remember in the white van, it was actually crank windows, so we had to paper in the box as we're like rolling it back up, and then desperately, because that van was fucking cold. Like the sedan was cold, but at least it was small enough to where the heat was hitting you. In that van, dude, you were fucked. You're sitting in the back of that van on the cold fucking steel, like I keep saying, just sitting on the cold fucking steel, wrapped in a blanket in your winter clothes, just waiting or sleeping on the back of it, just laying down in the empty van in the back, surrounded by newspapers, just trying to sleep until it was your turn. But anyway, so I remember I'm in the back seat of, I believe it was the sedan, and it's funny. So I'm in the back seat and I'm awake, and Henry in the front is falling asleep, and me and my dad keep like pointing at him and giggling and just like, look at this dumbass, look at this flaming idiot. My dad used to call us flaming idiot. And Henry's nodding off. And then as we are in like the back roads and we pull up to a stop sign, my dad actually stopped at it for some reason, even though he almost never did, because it was fucking 2 a.m. and nobody was around. He pulled up to the stop sign for a second, and as the car jolted to a stop, Henry fucking sits up with his eyes closed, rolls down the window, grabs a paper, sticks it out the window as if putting it into a box, and just lets go, rolls up the window and lays back down. And me and my dad look at each other like, what in the good goddamn fuck was that? And my dad goes, Henry. And he goes, huh? He's like, you just there's no mailbox there, you idiot. Or he probably says something like, there's no mailbox there, dingus, or something like that. One of those little like innocent, playful insults for kids. Yeah, he's like, there's no mailbox there. And Henry goes, oh, he like looks up, looks at the window, and I think he shrugged and like opened the door and like reached down to grab it from the snow, and then just like pulled back in and just fucking flopped over. And I think at that point, Dad's like, you want to switch? I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I got on the front, took a swig of my Coca-Cola, and Henry just fucking passed out in the back seat. That's funny. I still remember that pretty vividly to this day. Again, I must have been 10 or 11 or something like that at the time. Maybe younger. I might have been younger, because putting the context of Henry being 3 years older than me, I don't think he was 13 at the time, so I might have started at 8 or 9, I don't remember. Yeah. And I think I'll save this story for last. But this next one is what I always called spirit deer. And I think this might have been, actually, no, you know what? It wasn't when my hallucinations were a thing, because My dad saw it too, so it wasn't a hallucination. I remember this. We delivered newspapers to this one old lady's house. Okay, there's very few, or there are a few driveways and houses that I just barely remember driving down to deliver newspapers to. And this lady had a long, kind of crooked driveway cutting into the trees. And this is, I remember it's like the beginning of January. We had like the first big snowfall. Everything was like glittering and sparkling. It was like a full moon, or at least it was a mostly full moon, to where like the ground, all the untouched snow was like glowing, that like gray, blue, magical kind of look. And we're driving around and we're heading down this lady's driveway. And I don't think there was much of the driveway had been plowed, so we were going through it pretty slowly in this little car. And the driveway must have been probably 150 feet long, maybe 100 feet. We drive all the way in, and you get into the driveway, and then we throw the newspaper in the bag towards her front door, because she's an older lady, I believe. And then we swing the car around in the big driveway, back up, and then we reorient ourselves to drive out, because it's like a single car, kind of very thin wooded driveway. And then we start pulling out, and then then the car stops. Sorry if you're hearing notifications. Apparently people are messaging me now. My dad stops, and I'm sitting there like, dreary out of my mind. I remember being very sleepy at this point. It must have been, I think it was getting closer to when the sun was coming up, like around probably 4 or 5 a.m. And that's why there was so much of that. It was like that twilight glow of a fullish moon and the sun getting ready to come up kind of thing. And we stop at the mouth of the driveway near the house, and we're just sitting there, and the car's idling, and I'm like, I sit up for a second, like, what are we doing? And my dad's like, shh, look. And he like we look out the front of the windshield, and I'm bleary eyed, dude. I remember just being completely fucking zonked out because I was so tired. And I look out the windshield, and in the woods, in the untouched snow, is a deer. But the deer is pure white. I mean, like a solid, pure white deer. I don't remember if it had antlers or not. I could not tell you if it had antlers. I want to say that it did, but that could be just me adding details. But I remember it being solid white. And I look at it, and I'm like, is that a white deer? And he's like, yeah, that's a solid white deer. And I remember the way it moved was so ethereal. I'm not even making this up, because I've played this memory in my head a million times, because it was one of those things where I could not believe it, and I only believe it because he saw it too, and he's the one that pointed it out to me, and we were both flabbergasted at what we saw. And I want to say, where we were parked with our headlights were on the low beams, and the woods were at like the driveway is a little bit raised, so the woods were a little bit lower, and it was a little bit far away. I want to say it was probably 80 or more feet away from us, and it was like standing completely still and looking in our direction. It noticed us, obviously, but our headlights weren't hitting it. Our headlights were like hitting the ground, but of course, like I said, it was through the trees, but it was like, it's like its visage was bright enough through the trees, and it was, I don't know, I can't describe it, but it stood out. It was like a 3D model on top of a two-dimensional forest kind of thing, and just untouched by the shadows of the trees that we were casting. And it was like looking at us, and then I remember it like moved 1 foot forward, like to, get ready to move, and it like turned its head a little bit to walk away. And the way it was missing frames, and I can attribute to it moving weird in like a fractured, broken camera motion style to me being tired and broken memory and stuff. But I just remember it moving in an ethereal, unworldly type way, and then it literally like turned away from us to where its hind was facing us, and it just started walking into the woods, and it fucking disappeared behind a tree. I am not kidding. It walked behind a tree. Like think the cat and Coraline, how it would walk behind something and reemerge somewhere else. The deer did that, but it didn't reemerge. It just walked away behind something. And I remember I was like little, looking over the dashboard, leaning forward with like my chin up and looking down like the bottom half of my eyes. And then like as it disappeared, it was like a movie. Me and my dad both did a slow turn toward each other with our jaws dropped, and just like wide-eyed jaws dropped, and then looked forward again like it was a full-on movie scene. And he's like, holy shit. I'm like, you saw a white deer, like an albino deer, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, but it didn't look real. I'm like, no, it didn't look real. And again, I'm a kid. I was probably, again, I keep saying how old I was. I was like 10 or 11 or something like that, probably at this point. But we're like, holy shit, what the hell was that? We saw a spirit deer. We saw like the guardian of the forest or something like that. And I just remember, man, just having that with me for the rest of the night and up until now. That was fucking 20 years ago, and I can still remember it plain as day. It was so cool. Another quick story, actually, I just remembered while I was sharing that one, was actually, I wonder, real quick, I wonder if I mentioned that to my dad, if he would remember. I should ask him about that. But another quick story, I had just recently watched, actually, what year was this? Oh no, sorry, I just remembered a different story, and it wasn't newspapers, it was snow shoveling stories. So I'll have to make a different episode based around shoveling snow and plowing and stuff like that, because I have a lot of memories associated with that too. Because outside of delivering, after we did newspapers, after that era of my life was over, the other winter activity got replaced with was snow plowing driveways with my dad at midnight into the morning. And most of the time that was because I needed to be in the passenger seat so I could like look through and make sure like a car wasn't coming if we were backing out into the main road, or to make sure he didn't back into a tree. I was responsible for many broken taillights because I didn't see a tree or I was falling asleep. Sorry, Dad. I'll definitely have to do an episode on that though. So the last story I'm calling this Mama Bear. So driving around delivering the newspapers at that hour of the day, we would always see deer, we'd always see coyotes, coy dogs, bear, we'd see moose a couple times, rarely, but we would see moose. And this time, I believe I want to say it was spring or summer because there was no snow, but it wasn't cold. It was green out. There was green grass and shit. So I think it was spring or summer. And we were driving down, again, one of those back roads, but this road was, if you don't know anything about New Hampshire, it's very hilly and mountainy, so a lot of the roads are like roller coasters, where it's like a lot of left and right chevron turns followed by a steep hill and a harsh drop up and down. There's a lot of stuff like that. It really does feel like you are on a roller coaster if you're going fast enough. I've gone on roads going fast enough to where my stomach will literally drop going over a hill because you have a huge spike of a hill that just drops at like a 30-degree angle. So we were driving up this hill, and it was a blind hill. It was literally, you would probably have like a 70-degree incline that would drop to a 60-degree incline, but it was nighttime, so our headlights would cast that like abyssal shadow at the horizon of the hill. You'd see the top of the hill, and it would just be like a black bar. You couldn't see over the top of it. So we crested this hill, going probably 40 miles an hour down this road. We crested the hill, and immediately we see something on the road and it's impossible to stop, and we just go gunk, and we're like, holy shit. And that like woke us up, and that woke me up for sure. And I look behind me and I don't see anything. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? And my dad's like, there was a bear, we just hit a bear. I'm like, oh my god, really? So he's like, yeah. So we pull over up the road a little bit, we turn around and we head back. And then as we're heading back, we see where the bear came out. There's like some brush on the road where it had emerged from the trees, and like some broken branches or something where it came out. And then we're like, oh fuck, it's not there. Okay, it must be all right then. So we pull down the road back where we came to turn around again. And as we're doing that, we spin around, and then we go along the same path, and it runs out in front of us again from the opposite side of the road. We're like, holy shit. And we realize at that point it's an adolescent. It's not a full bear. So my dad, where we see it run out in front of us again, we don't hit it this time, and then we follow it. It goes into some lady's driveway, and we pull into the driveway, and then as we pull in, it goes to the right. So like the driveway curves to the left and opens up a little bit to like the leach field in the front, and we pull in, and then to the right of that is like the edge of the driveway where there's like a big oak tree, and the little bear climbs into the oak tree. And the hood of the car stops at the base of the tree, and we look up and like, oh shit, the bear's like up there. Well, he was able to climb, he ran away, he must be fine. Somehow we ran over the bear, he's fine. Okay, he's small enough to where it didn't. I don't know. And we're like, okay, cool. So we go to like reverse and spin around to the front. And as we spin to like reorient ourselves to leave the driveway, our headlights shine down the rest of the driveway and we can see into like their front yard slash leach field. And and in the fucking front yard are three other cubs and Mama Bear. And like as the way we positioned ourselves, because we were getting ready to turn around, now our trunk was at the base of the tree with the cub above us, and we were facing the leach field where Mama Bear was sitting there with her three other cubs playing, and we just kind of freeze. And we're like, oh shit. Because we're in between Mama Bear and the cub, who is probably injured and whining from the top of the tree. And Mama Bear stands up on her hind legs, 9 fucking feet tall. This bear must have been 800 pounds, 9 feet tall. And they're black bears, by the way, you know. Still dangerous, obviously very dangerous. They'll fucking kill you dead. But they're not brown bears. We're not in Alaska. These aren't grizzlies. But still, Mama Bear stands up and the kids are playing. They're whining at each other. They're snarling and stuff. And she's up on her hind legs, full frontal, glaring at us. And I can remember the bear's face to this day. Just like the most violent looking fucking snout and eyes you've ever seen. And we're sitting there, and some of the branches fall onto like the hood of the car because the bear is still like clambering above us. And we just sit there for a second. And we just kind of soak in the scene of the cubs playing and the mom sitting there or standing there looking at us. And we sit there for a minute or two, just absorbing the weird circumstance we found ourselves in. And nothing crazy happened. It was at that point we just like, I think my dad might have flashed the high beams or something. Just like a quick like flick and then pulled out of the driveway. And we pull to the mouth of the driveway and we wait. And as we wait, we look behind us and through the back window, and we can see the little bear kind of like scrape its way down the tree and run over and join its siblings. And we're like, okay, kid's okay. And then we pull out of the driveway and went back to go deliver newspapers. And that was really crazy. That was a crazy thing to see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little dive into newspaper stories. I will definitely be recording more of these as I remember them, and I'm going to try to write down some overnight plowing stories, snow plowing, gotta say that, overnight snow plowing stories to share with you guys if you're interested. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.